Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Danial Teaches Experience. Folks, I'm super excited. I got a bunch of fun stuff to share. The biggest thing that I'm excited about is the Journey to Self-Awareness exercise, folks. It's finally coming out March 1st, 2021. Daniel, what the heck is this? Why do I care? Don't worry, it's not going to be the whole thing talking about this. Just very, very slim. This is all you got to know. The number one question I get by everybody is, hey man, you study psychology, right? Should I study psychology? I'm like, dude, I have no idea. I don't know you. I don't know what kind of a life you have. I don't know what kind of a life you want. I don't know what your strengths are. I don't know what your values are. I don't know what your weaknesses are. Basically, it's an exercise, it's a self-reflective exercise designed for you to analyze your past, your present, in order to formulate an ideal future worth striving towards. So it's basically this exercise where you're confronted with a bunch of psychological questions, right? And these are meant to attack different angles of your life. They're meant to look at your perceptions of life, your perceptions of other people, how people look at you, your thoughts on the future, your thoughts on the past, your thoughts on your accomplishments, your thoughts on your failures. So there's an absolute plethora of questions here, and I think the amount of value that you can get from this is absolutely unbelievable. So the way that you can access this exercise is you go to Google, type in the Journey to Self-Awareness space Danial Teaches. It'll come up. I'm working with Thinkific, so Thinkific is the program that is allowing me to create said exercise. And one of the questions, for the sake of argument, so we're on the same page here, out of this exercise will be something like this. And this is actually an idea taken from Dr. Jordan Peterson. Dr. Peterson's a clinical psychologist, and the idea is, think about your personal hell. Think about the worst life imaginable. See, most of the time when you talk to people, you say, hey man, so what do you want in life? And they go, I don't know. And a lot of people don't know what they want to aim at. Fair enough. But many people know what they want to run away from. And let me tell you, that's a damn good motivator. If you're a guy who loves to travel and loves to go around, you might say, oh, Daniel, I could never do a 9-to-5 office job, man. Like, that's just not me. Good. Let's start from somewhere. If you don't know what you're aiming at, let's look at what you're running away from. What could be the worst life possible? And this is one out of, I believe, 23 questions in this self-reflective exercise where you're meant to sit down for 15 and 20 minutes and write down in detail everything, the worst life imaginable. Right? You would write about your health. You'd write about your relationships. So maybe if you're a person who really likes to work out and you're a fitness enthusiast, you're overweight now. You know, you got a drinking problem. Your friends and family have left you. You're all alone. You know, you don't have a spouse. You don't have a partner. There's no romantic relationships in your life whatsoever. You're in a career that is meaningless, that doesn't provide you with any passion, right? And whatever it is, and you're going to write it out in direct detail. Once again, you're saying, well, Daniel, why? Why would I want to do that? My friends, we forget that when we want to look at motivation, and I know it's a hard thing to kind of wrap our head around, but pain is an amazing motivator. Hell is an amazing motivator. You know, whether you want to talk about metaphorically or literally, right? For the people who are religious, you know, just a little bit of psychology on that, man. You want someone to not do something? Hey, man, you know, don't steal. Why? Because you end up in hell. It's an easy way to kind of go, okay, well, you know, in order to avoid something from happening, right? I will oblige. I will not steal for the sake of argument. But even if you're not a religious person, just hell in the sense of literally your life could be so miserable, so absolutely horrific that it would be like waking up in a nightmare. And you keep pinching yourself and you keep pinching yourself, and that's it. You're stuck in this nightmare. You think you're safe, man, but you're not. You don't realize that little things can fall apart one small action at a time. One beer a day. Watch what happens. Maybe you like to box. Maybe you like to spar really, really hard in the gym. One sparring session a day, 10 years. Look at where your brain's at with respect to brain damage. So the really importance of this specific question is when you start to formulate this idea of, my God, life could really be horrific. Like to the point of where, you know, oh God, this is a horrific thing to say, but to the point of where almost killing yourself doesn't sound too crazy. You got to understand, it's possible for your life to turn upside down like that. And so it doesn't take you by surprise, so you're not completely clueless to it. That's why it's really, really, really important that you write this down in absolute detail. And now the beauty of this exercise is when you're doing the writing, it's not on the program itself. It's not on the writing application. You do it completely on your own. You can open up Word, Google Docs. You can grab a notebook, my favorite pen, old school. Just write it down. And there's so much research that emphasizes the importance of writing with respect to psychological well-being, my friends. I cannot emphasize it enough. Again, I would highly, highly recommend it, guys. If you want to check out anything, check out the Journey to Self-Awareness exercise coming out March 1st, 2021, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're going to invest in anything in 2021, you got it. It's going to be so valuable, you won't even believe it. So 100%, I think writing is so important. I think thinking about things are so important, but it's thinking about difficult things. Thinking about difficult things that are not easy to think about. You're putting yourself in positions where you're forced to analyze things that maybe no one's ever asked you, right? So that was only one out of the 20-something questions. There's a plethora of more about your past, your present, your future, your job, your relationship, your future spouse, your habits, you name it, it's in there. So 100%, you totally got to check that out. Now, folks, I was thinking about this the other day, right? Folks, why did I start? So I started this whole YouTube and podcasting thing when I was 19 years old, right? Guys, why didn't I start earlier? Why did I start because I was ready? Or, okay, let's say this. Looking back, I sometimes think like, man, I could have started at 18 as well. Like there was one year where I kind of had the thought, but I pushed it down. I'll tell you exactly why. For whatever reason, my friends, I take public speaking very seriously. Now, this is all going to make sense. When you go up on stage, right? And let's say it's not a school play, it's not a, whatever thing. Like this is like a serious talk. You're giving a talk at TED, you're going on to universities, giving lectures. When people drive, when they pay for gas, when out of their own free time, they come over and see you, you better have something to say. And I always thought, man, like whenever you're given a platform to share a message, to share an opinion, to spread something, it better be worthwhile. Because time is the most valuable things that we have as human beings. And if you're giving me your time to listen to me, I better have something worth listening to. So that was my mindset. So I always thought, okay, if I ever put out content out there, it has to be when I feel like I know enough, when I feel like I can share enough. And I would argue I was maybe a little bit more on the harsher side. I was extremely critical about everything I thought and everything that I said. And I didn't view myself at that level where I said, nobody will give a damn about what I have to say. And that's strictly from the place of like, hey man, I'm a, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, what the hell do I know? Who cares what I have to say? And it wasn't until I started like really paying attention to some of these people on Instagram, on YouTube, and especially TikTok, where I see people, and I'm sorry, this is going to come off as just so rude and such a jerk, but just the most just whitewashed, sometimes sometimes incorrect psychological advice on TikTok. They're like, hey guys, here's 4 things you can do to get rid of your anxiety instantly. Like 2 out of those 4 were false. But you look at the views and it's got 2.2 million views. And you're like, oh my God, who is this, a professor? Is this, what kind of, studying have you done in the field? And you find out it's like a 16-year-old girl in high school. And you're like, what? I don't understand. You're giving mediocre advice at best. And I'm saying that because I'm a nice guy, but no, it's trash advice. I'll be honest. But I don't understand. Why do you get so many views and likes? Like my thought was like the audacity to make a podcast, to make a video and say, hey, I want to tell you about something, that you should know with regards to the world or anything in life, is like, who the hell do you think you are? Why should anybody care about you and your stupid opinion? Now, again, I know this sounds super hateful, but I mean, totally honest. Like, that's a serious question. Why would anyone give a damn about what you have to say? Now, I understand the extreme of this is, well, then, turn to social anxiety disorder and you never leave the house because you think about what people think about you and your clothes and, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, man, like, I am so careful about what I say on here. If I've ever said anything with respects to advice, about psychology, about philosophy, always, 100% of the time, always, it is always rooted in either science or research. I've never just said, guys, I feel like blah, blah, blah. It's always based on something. That doesn't mean I'm not wrong, or I could be wrong 100%. But what I'm saying is it's based in logic. It's based in rationale. It's got a foundation to it. It's not just like, guys, I feel like if you have depression, you should just watch like comedy movies. Like, no feelings. It's based on research. I do my research. Then I give my 2 cents on said research. That's how it goes. That's my relationship with the podcast. I do research. I think about how I can verbalize it in my own words, and I make one of these damn episodes or videos, right? But man, I just started looking at these kids on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, and man, there was this one girl who she'd come out and she'd just give just the most, I don't know, just shallow, surface level advice, and she got millions of followers, and her shtick was she was the psychology student. Hi guys, psychology student here, right? Lots of views, and then and you're sitting there, you're like, Daniel, do we hear some jealousy in your voice, just wait, just listen, right? And eventually this psychology student makes a video and goes, hey guys, I got a confession to make. I'm not even a psychology student. I'm a computer science student. I just thought it'd be fun. So I Googled some things that I've been telling you about them, right? And I just sit there and I scratch my head and I'm going, oh my God. And then TikTok is that one where it's like, you know, you got a kid who's like, hey, I'm going to slap my brother in the face as hard as I can. Check it out. 3 million views. What? What? If, like, being on TikTok and YouTube and seeing some people do what they do gave me so much confidence that I was like, dude, if he can do it, I can do it. Again, I sound like a huge jerk right now, but I'm going to tell you about where I'm coming from, right? Some of these kids, because listen, I'm 21, right? And when I see other guys who are 21 and they just act, either they're really immature or I'm really mature, I'm guessing it's a little bit of both, they make me look like Socrates. Like, they make me look like Freud. Like, I'm this freaking genius philosopher, blah, blah, blah. And I just scratch around like, I can't believe people listen to this stuff. Like, this is unbelievable. And this is the beautiful conversation I get with my friends about quality and quantity, right? How many times have I seen a YouTube video where I'm like, dude, like, your topic makes sense. I've definitely read that somewhere, but it's like, the way that you're saying it is just so boring. Like, if you speak in a monotone voice the entire time, I don't care if you've got the cure to cancer, man. Like, it's so boring. And I was like, man, when I think something is bad quality, and this is a good thing for you too. If you think, hey man, this is a goof of a movie. This movie sucks. Who would ever watch this? And it does amazing numbers. You really got to take a step back, man, and go, okay, who the hell am I to say what is good or bad quality? That's where it comes back to. So I know it's been like 6 minutes of Daniel ranting about him being better than everyone else, which is not the message. But the message here is, for me being a psychology student and being so embedded in mental health, it's very easy for me to look at something that is more entertainment based. Pranks, you know, or some guy playing FIFA and he's got 2 million views of people watching a person play a game. Think about that for a second, right? And then I'm biased and say, well, dude, you're not giving any advice. It has nothing to do with mental health. You're not bettering someone's life. You know, that's a bad quality video. But when you have 2 million views, let's say a video of mine about like how to deal with overthinking has got 10. It's like, dude, who decides what good quality is? I would argue that I don't decide what it is. Who the hell am I to say that? Of course I think my videos are good quality. Otherwise I wouldn't post them. But that's subjective. What I say is good quality really doesn't matter. What you say is good quality really doesn't matter either. What matters is, you ready for it? What the market says is good quality. If you put out a video on whatever, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and you're doing like a little shoulder shimmy, and you get 150,000 likes, it's like, okay, the market has said that this is good quality, that you should continue this if you're just looking at the numbers. And if I'm, you know, talking about, I don't know, man, why people get depressed and it doesn't get as many views, it's like, to play this kind of delusional game of like, oh no, my videos are always better quality and people just don't know yet. They like, dude, you gotta understand the audacity to place your opinions above other people's really, really just surprises me, man. And not you, because you're listening to this and I love you and I appreciate it for it, but I'm talking about other people. You know who I'm talking about, right? And it's just, they're like, I don't like this movie, thus the movie must suck. Like, dude, what is your opinion based on? Again, at least if it's based on some science or some resources, some research, something, great. You better be ready to back it up. But if it's just, I don't like the movie, so the movie sucks. Be careful. I don't like the movie, 100%, totally fine. The moment you say the movie sucks, you're making a fact. You're saying a statement, and you got to be careful. Because a statement is different from an opinion. You could say, hey man, this burger place absolutely sucks. Why? Because like, you know, they don't put, I don't know, like guacamole in their burgers. They don't have that option. It's like, well, dude, you got to understand it's subjective. So getting back to the whole thing, right? The reason why I didn't start for a long time was because I would think like, man, like, I don't really know what to say. Or if I did have what to say, I would just really be so critical about everything. And when I looked at what people were putting out there, I was like, people are really putting out anything, right? Anything that they think is fun and friendly and anything that they find amusing or educational, they put out there. So like, what the hell? Let's put out our stuff too. And that's exactly why I ended up putting out stuff. And again, one of the beauties of this talk of subjective and objectivity is I was able to really take a step back and be like, hey man, like, you can talk to me about quality and quantity all day long, but I'll tell you this, and I know I've said it again, and I know you're getting sick of it. Quantity is objective. You can put out 3 songs, we'll all agree it's 3 songs. But if I say, hey man, I put out an episode, it was really good quality, you might listen to it, but like, actually, Daniel, I think it was a 4 out of 10, man. You've done much better. Who's right? Right? Why can't we both be right? Right? Why can't we understand that we both have different perspectives? So I think that's extremely important, to just look at other people's opinions. And speaking of other people's opinions, I think the word canceled got really big in the last couple of years. Like prior to 2015, I don't think I've ever heard that word before. Like to cancel someone, that is just such an interesting thing. How do you know if someone should get canceled? Let me ask you that. What is the criteria that you look at if someone should be canceled? Here's where it gets tricky. You're going to say, well, Daniel, if they do something that is completely gross and unacceptable and intolerable and it's offensive to blah, 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 blah. Okay, great. But who decides? Who decides what's intolerable? Who decides what's offensive? I was talking to my sister about this. And I showed her a picture. I said, Nadia, this is a young lady and she's working. And behind her, she's got her boss who's, let's say the young lady's mid-20s, her boss is in his 60s and he's checking her out. Is that harassment? And she said, absolutely, 100%. She's making her feel uncomfortable. He's making her feel uncomfortable. And it's 100% harassment. And that's wrong. She stopped with and I'm paraphrasing on her behalf, but they call it like the male gaze. Fair. Right beside there's another photo. It's the exact same situation, except her boss is the same age and he's a good looking guy. And he's checking her out, but she likes it. Is that harassment? No. Why? Because she likes it. You say, well, there's no problem with that. If she likes it, it's not harassment. If she doesn't like it, it is harassment. Don't you think that's really confusing? And don't you worry at all that the other person can pick what harassment is? For fear of coming off like a complete crazy man, just check this out, right? Like, wouldn't it make more sense, man, if we really had an objective criteria to look at, right? Oh, if you say anything that's, let's say intentionally racist, intentionally homophobic, intentionally blah, blah, right? That's reason for getting you canceled or deplatformed or whatever. But if someone says something and we don't have any criteria, and some people are saying, yeah, man, get them canceled. Other people are saying, no, freedom of speech. You should say what you want to say. I think it was funny. I didn't get offended. It's like, well, we have a problem now because we don't actually know what harassment is to a certain degree. We don't really know what canceling is to a certain degree. And that makes things really, really tricky. There was a Gillette commercial that came out a couple years ago. It got big, stick and stuff on it, and a lot of people were criticizing it for making men look like total jerks. One thing that really stood out to me in that commercial was there was a scene where there's 2 guys talking, and there's this one young lady. They're all around the same age, all mid-20s, maybe early 30s. There's one young lady, she's walking past them, and one of the guys looks like he's about to go over and talk to her. Like he's talking to his buddy. He sees the girl walking past him. He goes, oh, I'm going to go over and talk to them. As soon as he takes a step, his buddy's like, hey, man, don't do it. Don't go over. Now, immediately when you see something like that, and this all relates to harassment and whatnot, it's like, is there anything wrong with that? You're in the street, you're talking to a buddy of yours, you're single, you see an attractive girl, it's pre-COVID, can you go over and start talking to her? Here's where it gets tricky. What are you saying? Are you saying, hey, beautiful, come sit on my lap? Or hey, baby, is it that kind of a message? Or is it, you go over, hey, how's it going? I'd love to take you out for a cup of coffee. Do you see how thin that line is? And you might say, well, Daniel, it's obvious. My friends, it's obvious the way that I'm saying it because I'm trying extra hard to exaggerate both sides so they stick out as much as possible. But in that ad, I swear to God, that was just it. The girl walked by and one dude looked as if he was about to approach her and just, you don't know what he was going to say. It was a terrible part on the producer's half because you don't know if he was going to say, hey, what's up? Hey, let's go back to my place. If he was just going to, you have no idea. So you just kind of have to interpret that. So it gets back to it. It goes, man, finding that line of what does it take to become canceled? What is harassment? What is offensive? And you might say, Daniel, I can't believe you're saying this. Obviously the answer is this. My friends, if I can recommend you one thing, it's really, really important that you do this. Always think about, when you have your answer, really try to think about another person's perspective. And it's important listen, Guys, do you think I'm dumb? Like, do you think I'm an idiot incapable of critical thought? And some of you might say yes, and that's all right. You have your opinions. But if you think no, I would love it if you were to think, okay, Daniel thinks about this stuff. He researches, he looks into things before he talks about them. Why does he have a particular stance on something? And with that, you would try to figure out why I think the way that I do. Not to agree with me, but to understand my positioning and to understand my reasons clearly. So clearly that you could articulate my reasons better than I could. So that you could present my argument on my behalf and you would say it so well out loud verbally that I would say, yep, that's exactly what I meant. Now, it doesn't have to do with this specific conversation, but just in general. Whenever you're talking to someone, whenever you're listening to someone, always think, man, why would they even ask such a question? Like I heard that over on one of the social media apps. I was saying like, guys, I was like, how many genders are there? And a lot of people just said 2. There's 2 definitively. Now, again, that's a whole other topic and there's research on that, whatever. If you haven't checked out my latest episode, the one before that, how many genders are there, definitely check that one out. But basically, all I thought in my head was like, dude, if you can answer so confidently too, it's like, why are you here? Why aren't you on like CBC and BB and like telling those guys on the panel? Why aren't you telling the legislation and the laws that are putting in this whole gender binary and the gender spectrum and all that stuff? If you are so damn confident, how do you know your opinion's right? And if that's the case, if the answer's so easy, why do you have so many people who think different than you? This isn't meant to doubt yourself. This isn't meant to, never feel confident to say what you want to say. But it's like, dude, you really got to take a step back. And even if you want to disagree with people, understand, why are you saying what you're saying? There has to be an important reason. Why, Daniel? Why? Because if you really want to change someone's mind, the number one thing you have to do, you have to make that person feel like they're being heard. There's been many times I'm talking to someone, we're discussing something that I don't agree with, and I go, listen, man, you got a couple of good points. This and this, 100% agree with you. I think that's definitely, you're definitely right on that. However, I completely disagree with it. So when someone feels heard, it just kind of brings that guard down and they don't have that need to defend themselves. So it's really, really important. But going back to opinions for a second, right? And you kind of get into this world of subjectivity with respects to like, okay, how can we decide what's offensive, right? So if you're a stand-up comic and you had to go make a couple of jokes, do you assume that whatever you don't find offensive, the crowd won't find offensive either? Like, think about that for a second. So if you don't find, let's say, this homophobic joke offensive or this Middle Eastern joke offensive, can you assume that the crowd won't either? I would argue that's what most comedians do. Now, how often is it that a comedian says something and you heard it's backlash? Dave Chappelle said something off the cuff, blah, blah. Kevin Hart had said some things a couple years ago, I believe, more than 10 years ago now, that got him removed from the Oscars, from hosting the Oscars way back when. So you got to understand, man, it's such a fine line between what is offensive, right? What is hate speech? What is harassment? And again, if you're like, Daniel, it's super clear, man, this is the answer. I would urge you to look at the other side and go, okay, well, in order to help make things clear, what are the most ambiguous parts of whatever getting canceled or of, harassment or of saying whatever? Because as long as it's in the air and we don't have a clear objective definition, it's like, great. That's going to leave doors open for argumenting all day long. Because if we look at a table, me, you, and, my friend will all agree a table is a table. But if it's not objective, and if it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, how sad does that painting, make you feel? It's like, well, now we all have different opinions, right? And you see how tricky it can get. And again, like, if you say, hey, that's an offensive joke, you should be deplatformed, you should be canceled. It's like, who the hell cares about how you feel? Seriously, like, well, maybe you're the only one that's offended in the crowd. Or maybe it would be really insensitive to not cater to you, to ignore you because you're a human being and you deserve to be heard. And if it hurts your feelings, then maybe that guy shouldn't talk about these things, right? So again, it's like, where is that line? Because if we just ignore everybody, it's like, well, I don't know if that's the right way to go, right? But if we also cater to everybody's feelings and make sure that nobody's offended ever, it's like, is that really a way to live? Because how do you know if something's offensive? You don't. You don't know if something is offensive until you say it. You look at people's reactions, you're like, oh, I think this person was offended. You tell a joke to 4 friends, 2 of them get offended. Well, do we not say that joke anymore? Do you see how it gets tricky, my friends, with catcalling and with, no, sorry, not catcalling, but just, well, actually, yeah, catcalling, right? Where it's like, hey, hey, Lisa from psychology, let's talk for a second. Like, how that can be conveyed, right? And how people can twist the story. And man, it's definitely problematic. It can definitely arise in different ways. And I think it's going to be a challenge to really kind of wrap your head around some of those things. But yeah, guys, that's just a really, really interesting thing that I thought about. And I think it's important to be aware of all the different perspectives that you can approach it from. Folks, thank you very much for listening. This has been another episode. I wish you an absolutely amazing day. Stay safe and take care of yourselves, my friends. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, thank you very, very much. Have a lovely day and take care, everybody. Bye-bye.